The ocean beneath the plane was a vast, endless blue, a mirror to the hollowed-out feeling in my chest. For 10 years, I'd traced this same route in reverse, leaving a piece of my soul on the tarmac in Denver each time. A decade of building data centers under Singapore's merciless sun, of swallowing the sticky, humid air while my heart remained in a cooler, drier climate, nestled in the foothills of the Rockies with my daughter. My savings account had grown fat, but my spirit had grown thin, sustained only by pixelated video calls and the dream of this day. I was coming home, not for a visit, but for good. And I was coming home to meet her my granddaughter, Alara, 4 years old, with a laugh I'd only heard through tinny speakers and a life I'd witnessed in curated squares on a screen. In my purse, nestled between my passport and a packet of airline almonds, was a small velvet box. Inside lay a tiny silver locket, shaped like a crescent moon, for Ilara. The other part of my surprise was waiting at the curb, the keys to the house on Aspen Lane, the one with the wraparound porch and the old willow tree in the backyard. I'd bought it for Hannah the month before I left, a tangible promise that she would always have a safe harbor. A mother's desperate attempt to anchor her child from 12,000 miles away. The Denver air, crisp and tinged with the scent of pine, hit me like a beloved memory as I stepped out of the airport. It was a physical relief, a homecoming for my very bones. The taxi ride was a blur of familiar landmarks and a frantic, joyful anticipation that made my hands tremble. I pictured it, Hannah's shock, her tears, the crushing hug, Alara's curious gaze turning into shy recognition. I would cook dinner in that sunlit kitchen I'd only ever seen in listing photos. We would sit at a real table, not across a digital divide. And I would learn the sound of my granddaughter's voice without any lag. The house on Aspen Lane was even more perfect than the pictures. The paint was fresh, the garden neat. My heart hammered against my ribs as I paid the driver. As I stood on the sidewalk, drinking in the sight of the home I'd given them, their home, our home, now. I didn't ring the bell. The element of surprise was a gift I'd been crafting for a year. With a silent prayer of thanks, I slid the key into the lock. It turned with a smooth, well-oiled click. The word surprise was a balloon of joy in my throat, ready to burst. It popped, silently, painfully, as the sound of a man's voice sliced through the quiet foyer. It wasn't a shout, it was worse. It was calm, controlled, and icy with contempt. If that floor isn't spotless in 5 minutes, you know what happens tonight. Don't make me repeat myself. My blood didn't run cold. It crystallized, sharp and brittle in my veins. I knew that voice. David, Hannah's husband, but it was a version of him I'd never heard. Stripped of the casual charm he wore during our brief, awkward video calls. Frozen in the shadow of the hallway, I peered into the living room. The scene etched itself into my mind with the clarity of a nightmare. Hannah, my brilliant, vibrant Hannah, the girl who'd debated philosophy with me at 16 and built a thriving online boutique by 22, was on her hands and knees. She was scrubbing at a dark stain on the beautiful hardwood floor, her movements frantic, jerky. She wore an apron. It was faded, stained, and across the front, in crude, block letters, were the words, asterisk, asterisk, property of Kensington. Asterisk, asterisk, a wave of nausea, hot and sour, rose in my throat. Property. They had branded my child. Before I could move, before I could scream, the atmosphere in the room shifted. David's head turned toward the hallway. In the space of a heartbeat, his expression underwent a grotesque transformation. The cruel mask melted, replaced by a smile of such warm, practiced delight that my stomach lurched. Eleanor, my God, what a wonderful surprise, he boomed, striding toward me with arms wide open. He enveloped me in a hug that felt like being trapped in a cage. Over his shoulder, I watched Hannah scramble to her feet. Her eyes, wide with a terror that shattered me, met mine for a fleeting second. She fumbled with the apron strings, yanking the vile thing off and shoving it behind a sofa cushion. Her hands were shaking. "Mom," she said, and her voice was a thin, strained wire. She attempted a smile. It was a ghastly thing, a crack in a dam holding back an ocean of pain. I'm fine. Just a little spill. You're here." From behind her legs, a small face peeked out, huge, wary brown eyes, fringed with lashes I could see from across the room, studied me, Alara, in the flesh. She was more beautiful than any pixel could capture, and more frightened. "Mama," she whispered, the sound barely a breath. "Who's that lady?" Those 5 words were a physical blow. That lady, After all the stories, all the songs sung over video, all the promises of Grandma Eleanor in faraway Singapore, I was a stranger, a strange lady in her hallway. I forced my knees to bend, lowering myself to her level, ignoring the protest in my joints. "Hello, my darling Ilara," I said, pouring every ounce of gentleness I possessed into my voice, though inside I was screaming, "I'm your Grandma Ellie. We talked to the moon together, remember? I've come all the way across the ocean to see you." Ilara buried her face in Hannah's thigh. Hannah's hand came down, a reflex of protection, to stroke her daughter's hair. As she moved, the sleeve of her sweater rode up, a bruise, not a small, clumsy bump, a lurid, purple-yellow constellation of a bruise, wrapping around her forearm like a vicious bracelet. "Hannah," I started, my voice breaking. Her eyes flew to mine, wide with panic. Asterisk, "Not now. Please, not now." Asterisk. She yanked the sleeve down. David's hand landed on my shoulder, heavy and proprietary. "She's been a bit of a klutz lately, Eleanor," he said with a laugh that had no warmth, only hollow amusement. "You know how it is, always bumping into cabinets. Isn't that right, honey?" Hannah nodded, her gaze fixed on the floor. Yes, clumsy. The Hannah I knew was gone. In her place was a ghost who flinched at her husband's voice, who glanced at him for permission to breathe. My granddaughter, who should have been exploring this new person with bold curiosity, hid as if from a monster. And I was standing in the beautiful house I'd bought, which now felt like a beautifully decorated prison. The joyful homecoming I'd carried in my heart for 10 years lay shattered at my feet. One truth, cold and hard, rose from the wreckage. My family was drowning, and I had just stumbled into the deep end. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The next 3 hours were a masterclass in quiet horror, performed over weak tea in the immaculate living room. David held court, talking loudly of his family's generosity in letting Hannah and Ilara live here, of his real estate ventures, of the challenging adjustment Hannah had after Ilara was born. Every word was a polished stone meant to build a wall of normalcy. Hannah sat silent, a statue of nerves, jumping whenever David addressed her directly. Ilara eventually crept out and played quietly with blocks, but her eyes kept darting to me, then to her mother, then to David. Finally, David announced he had a business meeting. The whiskey on his breath suggested otherwise. He left with another bone-crushing hug for me, and a cold, pointed look for Hannah. "Keep the place tidy for our guest, darling." The moment the door closed behind him, the very air in the house changed. It expanded, grew lighter. Ilara, sensing the shift, let out a little sigh and began building her blocks with more purpose. Hannah seemed to shrink into the sofa, the performance over, leaving only exhaustion. "She needs a nap," Hannah murmured, her eyes on Ilara. "I'll put her down," I said, the words an offering. Hannah hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." Leading Ilara up the stairs to a charming sunlit bedroom was its own kind of agony. This was the room I'd imagined her in, the room I'd paid for. She climbed into bed without protest, clutching a worn stuffed owl. "Grandma Ellie?" she asked as I tucked the covers around her. "Yes, my moonbeam. Are you staying?" The hope in that tiny question undid me. "Yes, sweetheart, I'm staying right here." A small, tentative smile touched her lips before she closed her eyes. I sat on the edge of the bed until her breathing deepened, until I was sure she was asleep. Then I went back downstairs. Hannah was at the kitchen table, staring at her own hands as if they belonged to someone else. The afternoon sun was cruel, illuminating what the dim living room had hidden, not just the bruise on her arm, but the shadow of another along her jawline, the red marks on her wrists that spoke of being gripped hard. I pulled out the chair beside her. The sound made her flinch. "Hannah Rose," I said, using the full name I'd whispered to her the night she was born. "Look at me." She couldn't. Tears welled and spilled over, tracking silently down her cheeks. "Tell me about the bruises, and don't you dare say you're clumsy. I taught you to ride a bike, to climb a tree. You have the balance of a cat." A sob broke from her, harsh and ragged. She wrapped her arms around herself, rocking slightly. "The dam didn't just break, it exploded. Oh mama," she wept. The little girl named a knife in my heart. I lost myself. After it wasn't joy, it was this black hole. I couldn't get up. I couldn't hold her. I couldn't stop crying. She dragged in a shuddering breath. "Postpartum depression. Psychosis," they said. It was like living in a thick, terrible fog. David's family, his mother Victoria, she said she'd handle everything. The doctors, the medicine, the house. I was so grateful. I was drowning, and they threw me a rope. She looked at me then, her eyes pools of utter devastation. The rope was anchored to hell, the medication. It made everything fuzzy. I couldn't think. Victoria would bring me papers. Just sign this, dear, for the insurance. This one lets us help with your finances while you're unwell. It's temporary. Just until you're back on your feet. I signed everything. I trusted them. A cold, murderous rage began to burn in my chest, clean and sharp. When the fog started to lift, when I could think again, I asked about the house, my business account. Victoria sat right where you are. Hannah's voice dropped to a venomous whisper. She told me I had signed it all over. The house, my savings, that I had incurred enormous debt for my care, that my only way to work it off and be a fit mother for Ilara was to stay here and serve the family. If I tried to leave, if I complained, they'd have me declared unfit. They'd take her mama. They'd take my Ilara. The room tilted, the beautiful kitchen, the granite counters I'd chosen, the maple cabinets, they were the set pieces of my daughter's imprisonment. I've been their maid, their cook, their property. She spat the last word. For 3 years, Ilara calls Victoria grandma. She's afraid of David. She's never known a day of safety in her own home. Hannah stood, her movements stiff, and walked to a drawer. She pulled out a thick, battered manila folder and placed it on the table between us with a soft, final thud. I kept everything, every paper I signed in that haze, every doctor's note, every receipt. I hid it, like a squirrel with nuts, hoping, just hoping one day someone would see it. Someone would help me understand how I let this happen. I opened the folder. The top sheet was a property deed transfer, dated March 18th. Hannah's signature was a shaky, pathetic scrawl. Beneath it was a medical chart from the same week. Dr. Eris Thorne, psychiatrist, diagnosis, severe postpartum psychosis, medication, lorazepam, sertraline quetiapine, maximum therapeutic doses. Nurse's note, * patient, largely nonverbal, disoriented to time and place, requires assistance with all ADL's activities of daily living. * She had signed away her home on a day she likely couldn't have told you her own name. I reached across the table and took her ravaged hands in mine. You did not let this happen. They attacked you when you were wounded. They are predators. I held her gaze, pouring every ounce of my being into the words. Listen to me, Hannah. That promise I made you the day you were born to always, always protect you, it has no expiration date. It's still valid. And now it extends to Ilara. We are going to burn their world to the ground. For the first time, a flicker of something other than terror appeared in her eyes, a tiny, fragile spark of the fighter I raised. It was all I needed. ******. That night, after a silent, tense dinner where David held forth and Hannah played her part, I spread the contents of the folder across my guest bed. I was a strategist by trade. I built networks, systems, infrastructures. Now I would deconstruct one. The medical records were the linchpin. The dates were a blatant, damning timeline of exploitation. The next morning, I went to Mountain View Psychiatric Hospital. Dr. Eris Thorne, a woman with kind eyes and a firm handshake, remembered Hannah vividly. Mrs. Chen, she said, her brow furrowed with concern as she reviewed the chart. Your daughter was one of the most acute cases I've treated. In mid-March of that year, she was in a pharmacologically induced state of minimal consciousness. We were stabilizing her, not preparing her for legal decisions. The cocktail she was on would have rendered her incapable of understanding a television commercial, let alone a property contract. She called in the head nurse, Lydia Cruz. Lydia's face darkened with anger as I explained. I remember that week, Lydia said, her voice tight. Her mother-in-law Victoria was here constantly, so helpful, so concerned. She'd bring paperwork, saying it was for insurance, for benefits. We were focused on Hannah's vital signs, on getting her to eat, not on the papers her family brought. But I remember thinking, Hannah would stare at the pen like it was a foreign object. We had to guide her hand to sign a consent form for a vitamin shot. It took 5 minutes. The idea that she knowingly signed a deed, she shook her head. It's medically impossible. Dr. Thorne prepared a formal, notarized statement. This is exploitation of a vulnerable adult, she said, handing me the document. It's not just civil fraud, it's criminal. Her consent was invalid. Those documents are worthless. Armed with that truth, I needed a warrior. I found her in Marta Vega. Her law firm, Vega and Associates, had a reputation for taking on powerful abusers and breaking them. Her office, high in a downtown tower, was all clean lines and steel, a reflection of the woman herself. Marta listened, her sharp eyes missing nothing, her pen scratching notes on a pristine legal pad. When I finished, she set the pen down precisely. Eleanor, what the Kensingtons did is a symphony of crimes. Freud, undue influence, false imprisonment, emotional and physical abuse. The property apron alone could be entered as evidence of a condition of servitude. She leaned forward, her gaze relentless. We will not settle for just getting the house back. We will dismantle them, but we must be smart. We give them one chance to surrender. It's a formality. People this entitled never take it. Then we hit them with everything: civil suit, criminal referrals to the district attorney, and the court of public opinion. Public opinion? I asked. A grim smile touched her lips. The Kensingtons cared deeply about their legacy. Their standing at the country club. We're going to torch that standing. Then we take the rest. The plan was set. The following morning, Marta and I drove to the Kensington estate in Cherry Hills. It was a fortress of old money and arrogance. Victoria Kensington received us in a sitting room that felt more like a museum. She was a slender woman, in her 60s, with perfectly coiffed silver hair and eyes like chips of flint. Eleanor, she said, not offering a seat. What an unexpected intrusion. David mentioned you'd surprised them. We're not here for pleasantries, Victoria, Marta said, her voice like a scalpel. She placed Dr. Thorne's medical assessment on the antique coffee table. Your daughter-in-law signed legal documents while under maximum-dose psychiatric medication that rendered her mentally incompetent. The transfer of the house on Aspen Lane is void. The exploitation, the abuse, the forced labor, it ends today. You have 48 hours to sign the house back to Hannah, along with a certified check for $1 million in damages. Victoria didn't blink. She picked up the paper, glanced at it, and let it flutter back to the table. How dare you, she said softly, venomously. My family has cared for that unstable girl and her child for years. We saved her from herself. This is the gratitude we receive from a absentee mother who swoops in with baseless accusations. She stood. Get out. You have no idea who you're dealing with. David chose that moment to storm in. Mom, the lawyer's car is out front. What's she doing here? He saw me, and his mask of civility dissolved. You're poisoning her against me. I'll have you thrown out of my house. It's not your house, I said, my voice quiet but clear in the vast room. It's Hannah's, and you are a bully who preys on sick women. Your time is up. David took a threatening step toward me. Marta didn't move, but her voice cut through the space. I'd advise against that, Mr. Kensington. Assault charges would complement the fraud and trafficking charges quite nicely. Trafficking, Victoria hissed. Forced labor or services obtained through coercion and threats, Marta clarified. Now 48 hours, the clock starts now. We left them sputtering in their gilded cage. In the car, Marta let out a short, satisfied breath. Perfect, they'll never comply. Now we go to war. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The war began not in a courtroom, but on the front page of the Denver Chronicle. Investigative journalist Ben Carter's story ran under the headline, Legacy of Cruelty. Prominent family accused of enslaving daughter-in-law. It laid out the facts with clinical precision, the medical records, the apron, the timeline, the bruises photographed by a discreet specialist Marta had sent to the house. It included a quote from a tearful, anonymous former Kensington housekeeper about the atmosphere of fear. The effect was instantaneous and volcanic. The story trended. Hashtags like #Justice for Hannah and #NotProperty bloomed across social media. News vans appeared at the end of Aspen Lane. Casseroles and bouquets from neighbors piled up on our porch with notes of support and shame. We should have seen. The local women's shelter offered Hannah counseling and legal aid. The Kensington's world of quiet power and whispered influence was flooded with a very loud, very public spotlight, and they crumbled under it. 40-7 hours after our ultimatum. As we were surrounded by the tangible warmth of our community's support, Marta called. Her voice vibrated with triumph. Eleanor, get downtown. Now. Judge Anita Morales has granted our emergency motion. The deed transfer is annulled. The house is Hannah's, free and clear, effective immediately. At the courthouse, it was a spectacle. The Kensingtons, flanked by a team of expensive, scowling lawyers, looked shrunken. Victoria's poise was gone, replaced by a rigid, pale fury. David glared pure hatred at us. Judge Morales, a woman with a nonsense demeanor, was unequivocal. The evidence of incapacity is overwhelming and uncontested. The petition to void the deed is granted. Furthermore, A permanent restraining order is issued against David and Victoria Kensington, prohibiting any contact with Hannah or Elara Chen. The gavel sounded like freedom. We moved back into the house on Aspen Lane that very afternoon. It wasn't a triumphant procession, but a quiet, tearful return. Hannah walked through each room, touching walls, windowsills, as if reconsecrating them. Elara, holding my hand, asked, "Grandma Ellie, is this our house for real now?" "For real and forever." Moonbeam. That night, we ate pizza on the living room floor, laughing at the mess. The normalcy of it, a precious, fragile gift. The shadow was lifting. But evil doesn't always slink away, it sometimes rages. David's threats turned to drunken, rambling voicemails Marta recorded with glee. We changed the locks, installed a security system, and tried to rebuild our peace. It lasted for 10 blissful, healing days. Hannah's smile began to reach her eyes. Ilara's laughter became a constant melody. She stopped calling me that lady and started climbing into my lap for stories. We planted a garden. We painted a room sunshine yellow. We lived. Then, on a night when a fierce spring storm lashed the city, the rage came to our door. I was reading in bed when I heard it, not the wind, but a heavy, deliberate thump on the porch. Then the smell cut through the damp air. Gasoline. I peered out the window. Lightning flashed, illuminating David's face, twisted and unrecognizable, as he sloshed liquid from a can around the foundation of our home. My 911 call was a hissed prayer. He's here. He's pouring gas. He's going to burn it. 27 Aspen Lane. Please, hurry. I ran to Hannah's room. Fire, David. Now. Mother's instinct had her out of bed before her eyes were fully open. We grabbed Elara, who woke crying in confusion, the acrid smell already seeping in. The front door was haloed in orange light. Flames licked up the porch posts. We fled to the back, but David was there, at the sliding door, a tire iron in his hand. The glass exploded inward. "Now John 1 leaves," he screamed, the storm and his madness merging into one howl. "You took everything. I'll take everything." "Hannah, the dining room window. Go, now." I shoved them behind me and grabbed the only weapon I could see, a heavy cast iron skillet from the stove. David swung the tire iron. I ducked, the metal whistling past my ear, and brought the skillet up with all the strength of a decade of regret and a mother's fury. It connected with his arm with a sickening crack. He roared in pain, but came at me again. We grappled in the smoke-filled kitchen, a chaotic dance of desperation. He was stronger, younger, fueled by hate, but I was fueled by a love so vast it terrified me. For every bruise on Hannah, for every fearful glance from Elara, I found a reserve of strength I never knew I had. The sound of sirens cut through the cacophony. David heard it too, his eyes wild with panic. He tried to shove past me toward the back door, toward where Hannah was struggling to push Elara through the high window. "No!" I gasped, lunging for his legs, bringing him down. We crashed to the floor as the front door burst open and firefighters flooded in, their boots heavy, their shouts, orders of salvation. I dragged myself away as they subdued David. Outside, in the driving rain, I found Hannah and Elara huddled under a blanket a neighbor had brought. Elara launched herself into my arms, sobbing, "Grandma, you're okay." I held them both, the three of us shaking, as we watched the firefighters battle the blaze that had scarred but not consumed our home. David, handcuffed, was led to a police car, his final screams lost to the storm. "It's over," I whispered into Hannah's wet hair. "He can't hurt you ever again." Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The final reckoning came months later. David Kensington, convicted of arson, attempted murder, kidnapping for blocking our escape, and the original fraud charges, was sentenced to 25 years without parole. Victoria, found guilty of conspiracy, exploitation, and fraud, received 12 years. The Kensington fortune was eviscerated by restitution orders and civil judgments. The mansion was sold. Their name became a footnote of shame in the city they once thought they owned. We used the restitution to heal, not just the house, which we rebuilt with a new, sun-drenched kitchen and a playroom for Elara, but ourselves. Hannah enrolled in college to become a counselor for survivors of domestic abuse. "I want to be the person I needed," she said, and my Elara blossomed in the sunlight of safety. She is fierce and funny and knows, bone deep, that she is loved, every night, without fail. She asks for the story of the brave little girl and the wise grandmother owl who protected the forest, and every night, I tell it. One evening, as I pushed her on the new swing set under a peach-colored sky, she slowed her pumping legs and looked at me, utterly serious. Grandma, yes, my heart. Will you live with us until I'm 100? I stopped the swing and knelt in the grass, taking her small, sticky hands in mine. I looked at her hot Hannah's eyes, my own stubborn chin, and a spirit entirely her own. Elara, I said, my voice thick with a joy so profound it ached. I will live with you until the moon falls out of the sky and the stars forget how to shine. And even then, I'll find a way to stay. From the porch, Hannah watched us, her face radiant with a peace she'd earned. Love you, Mom, she called, the words simple and absolute. I looked back at my daughter, at my granddaughter, at the home we had fought for and saved. The journey back had been through fire and darkness, but it led here, to this ordinary, extraordinary moment. For 10 years, I chased a future, thinking I was building a legacy in concrete and code. I was wrong. My legacy wasn't in Singapore. It was here, in the laughter ringing from a swing set, in the quiet strength returning to my daughter's eyes, in the word Grandma spoken with unwavering trust. I had crossed an ocean to come home, only to discover that home is not a place on a map. It's the light you carry for others in their darkest night, and the harbor you become when their storms finally break. I am Eleanor Chen. I am a mother. I am a grandmother. And I am home.